Thank you very much, everybody, and welcome to the EU delegation offices, and to report to you in relation to my visit to the United States, my first visit here as Trade Commissioner. It's our most important trading partner with the European Union. That's why I'm here. Transatlantic trade in goods and services is worth over $1.3 trillion per year, $3 billion per day. The total value of our investment stocks is over $5 trillion. 60% of all US overseas investment is with the EU, and 68% of all foreign direct investment in the US is from the EU, which generates about 9 million jobs in the United States. So that's the reason why we should be talking to each other about how we can deepen this relationship, identify how we can resolve some short-term disputes and issues, and develop a common trade agenda going forward. And that's what I have been trying to do with various meetings this week. And just, you have the program that I have been engaged with. But I started with a very positive statement from the United States, Japan and the EU in respect of the trilateral process around industrial subsidies and forced technology transfer, which we announced on Tuesday morning last. Ambassador Lighthizer, Minister Kajiyama and myself were very pleased to stand together on a common agenda in relation to what we wish to do together in relation to industrial subsidies and forced technology transfer. And we are now going forward with this agenda in an outreach to like-minded member countries of the WTO and elsewhere who may share our agenda as outlined in this trilateral process, and to be able to make further progress during the course of 2020. The other meetings I've had with Secretary Mnuchin, meetings with various members of the Congress and the Senate, old friends like Colin Peterson, the chairman of the Agricultural Committee, and his former chairman, Mr. Conaway, whom I've met in my previous life as a Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Development in the European Union. So it's nice to meet them again. And I met the Ambassador Lighthizer on a number of occasions, and notwithstanding the man had a very busy week with the US-China negotiations, we had a very good exchange of views on many issues on 2 occasions this week. And we have met members of Congress led by the Republican caucus led by Kevin Brady, who is of course the ranking member of the House and Ways Committee, and I met the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Mr. Richie Neal. I met Senator Chuck Grassley, who always has some soya beans and corn on the table, and he didn't surprise on this occasion, so I had some good news for him. And that was what we did on yesterday. And then today we had meetings again, and the meetings were largely around an address I gave. I presume that you've got the material from the speech I made at the Centre for Strategic and International Studies. I also I met the Atlantic Council, I met the Chamber of Commerce, Secretary Ross, and Mr. Kudlow. Well, I'm coming from Mr. Kudlow now, so it was a very full agenda. But you know, we are trying to work together where we can in relation to develop this common agenda. We face many issues jointly, and we see the value of cooperation in what we've achieved on Tuesday with Japan, but we want to build on that. And there are positive elements that were negotiated by the United States and China, which gives us some work that we can do together on EU-US-China cooperation, because we do share some concerns in relation to unfair trading practices and state-owned enterprises and industrial subsidies, and we are developing our own toolbox in policy terms in the European Union in order to address some of these issues as well. I had some very good exchanges with business, and they want to see a close and aligned working relationship as far as possible between the United States and the EU, and certainly they are asking me to engage as often as I can with the US in order to try and see can we make progress in that direction. So that's certainly the opening remarks I want to make, so I'll leave it open for questions.
Hi, it's Sean Donnan from Bloomberg News.
Sure.
Can you just, two questions. First of all, can you just enlighten us on what exactly happened with the U.S. in terms of this tariff threat related to Iran and the JCPOA that was reported by the Washington Post this week, and whether that was the subject of discussions between you and any of your interlocutors in the administration this week? Secondly, on the industrial subsidies trilateral move, things move slowly at the WTO and in terms of trying to get global rules in place. How long is this going to take to get to a point where the rules actually change?
When I shared the analysis of Ambassador Lighthouser in relation to the reform of the WTO, I share the fact that we need to revamp the rules after 25 years. The European Union is up for to do that, and we want to work with the United States in developing proposals about how we can actually develop a rule book that's fit for purpose for the 21st century and to be able to tackle new issues that weren't there 25 years ago, and particularly in digital trade and the technological issues that you're well aware of. And it isn't acceptable that it takes so long to make decisions. And it isn't acceptable that a consensus-orientated decision-making process is going to achieve an awful lot in the short term. So we are offering to work with the United States in developing proposals that will make some major changes, and not just tweaks at the margins. I read the same as you did, the issue around the Iranian matter, and where this story came from, I don't know. I certainly haven't been briefed, or I haven't any knowledge about what is behind this particular story, whether it's true or not. Sorry about that.
So the subject did not come up?
Subject never came up anywhere.
Hi, Marilee, International Trade Today. You said you'd like to resolve some short-term disputes, but of course the Airbus subsidies is anything but short-term. Before the compliance panel, y'all have held that you had already resolved the issue. What is keeping the United States and Europe from having a meeting of the minds on how to resolve aircraft subsidies at this juncture?
Well, we regret the choice of the United States to move ahead with imposing tariffs in the Airbus WTO case because we actually submitted proposals to negotiate a settlement that would deal with the Airbus and Boeing subsidy issues, as you rightly point out, going on a long time, for 15 years. So, it left the European Union with no alternative but to follow through in due course with our own tariffs in the Boeing case, if we're not going to reach a negotiated outcome. But this is where I don't want to be. So I've offered to the United States at every possible opportunity this week to develop solutions around a negotiated outcome. And it remains a matter for the United States if they wish to take up this offer.
When you say I offered a negotiated outcome, did they just say, we don't think your negotiations are coming from a good starting point? Like, what did they say?
Well, what they said is that the initial proposals that we've made didn't go far enough. But at least there's an opinion expressed in relation to the proposals, and we are looking forward to what the United States are prepared to put on the table now in relation to what they would like to see as the eventual outcome. But there is engagement in recent times for the first time in relation to the EU proposals that were put forward. The present ones are not acceptable to the United States, but we are still working together to see can we get a negotiated outcome.
Hi, Kat Lucero with MLEX. To follow up on that, can you give us more examples in terms of what proposals didn't go far enough for the U.S.?
Well, certainly I think we want to deal with this issue in a comprehensive way, and we share that view with the United States. And after 15 years, it has developed into probably a larger number of issues than we would have wished for at the beginning of this process. So what we share is an objective of having a comprehensive outcome in relation to civil aviation, and that we deal with the past and the present and look forward to the future in terms of developing a strong civil aviation manufacturing sector. And you saw recently where Airbus announced a significant investment in the United States and create a lot of jobs in Alabama. So I think we can do more together in terms of economic benefit on both sides, but it has to be done on the same basis as a level playing field. We note that the Washington tax issue is not resolved yet, and we want these companies to come into compliance on both sides, Airbus and Boeing, because otherwise we are going to lose competitiveness and we're going to lose opportunities, and other countries will take up and fill the vacuum.
Doug Palmer.
Thank you.
Hi, Commissioner Hogan. Doug Palmer, Click. Did you get any sense from the Trump administration, from Ambassador Lighthizer today, that they're willing to provide more time for talks on the DST issue and on the Airbus issue, or did you get the impression that they're going to go ahead quickly with the tariffs in both of those disputes?
Well, we didn't get into any definitive actions today that are being contemplated by the United States, only that they did express certainly a strong view that they didn't agree with the approach of the French government and other governments in the European Union who are willing to go ahead with the imposition of a digital service tax. But there are meetings ongoing and contact between Secretary Mnuchin and the French Minister for the Economy, Mr. Bruno Le Maire, and hopefully that process, together with the work that's going on in the OECD, can form the basis of a compromise and a positive outcome. So we wait and see.
Okay. Yes, both. Actually, let's start with Josh all the way down, and then we'll work us. Yes, and then two gentlemen down here on the side after.
Commissioner Hogan, Josh Zimbrun from the Wall Street Journal. China, Mexico, Canada, Japan, South Korea have all been able to strike deals with the United States. And they've all had tariffs imposed on them as part of the process, and they've all had the United States shift its kind of stated objectives several times throughout the process. Why has Europe been the one that's been unable to get to the point of a deal? Has the U.S. just treated Europe more unfairly than it treated China and all the other partners? Or has Europe perhaps been a little more stubborn?
Well, you do know that President Trump and President Juncker had a very good meeting in July 2018, where we agreed an agenda on so many issues to deal with industrial subsidies and industrial policy, but also many areas of work that we could do in cooperation together around conformity assessment, standards, regulatory cooperation, to mention just a few. And there has been a lot of work going on in these areas. And we're not far off in terms of concluding very important discussions around some of those chapters that I've mentioned. But of course, agriculture remains a sticking point in relation to starting the negotiations on the industrial side. And I've been exploring some options with various people this week to see how we can break this impasse. Because in that agreement, we had explicitly stated that soybeans, cereals, LNG were all very important issues for the United States administration if the European Union would agree to buy more of those products, and we did. So we have a 120% increase in soybean exports from the United States to the European Union. We have a 180% increase in cereal exports to the European Union, so Chuck Grassley is very happy from Iowa. And then we have a massive explosion in the amount of LNG that's coming into the European Union, and member states in the European Union are constructing terminals to take more of it, because we want to diversify our energy mix. And I think that if we look at the regulatory cooperation area and the non-tariff barriers that are there at the moment arising from sanitary or phytosanitary issues, that we could identify some more work that could be done here in the agricultural area to unlock the potential for United States farmers as well as European Union companies to be able to do more business together on the agricultural side. And we're willing to explore this.
Yeah, Bill Thompson, Agripulse. Sorry, that was going to be partially my question to agriculture. Exploring, could you tell us maybe a little bit about more exploring those options? And the Republicans, after meeting with you, the House Republicans said they urged that you include all agriculture in it. Is that your response to them?
Well, no, I said no to putting agriculture at the table, because the United States doesn't want to put public procurement on the table or maritime issues. So what we did explore how we could break the impasse at the same time. and helping each side in relation to agricultural matters by looking at the sanitary and phytosanitary barriers that are there at the moment on both sides. We have a long list on each side. And I'll give you an example. Like when I granted approval, or the European Commission did, to give, almonds and nuts approval 4 years ago from the United States to the European Union, it was worth $2.2 billion to the US farming community. We were promised in return that certain non-tariff barriers would be resolved, particularly around apples and pears and very simple products like that. I'm waiting 12 years to establish what is the scientific basis why these products are being prevented from going into the United States, but I haven't got an answer yet. But there might be 2 or 3 issues where we can agree on each side in order to, deal with these long, outstanding non-tariff barriers. And I think on agriculture we have more than any other sector. So if we work together on these, I think that we can find, a different type of mechanism to find solutions to these agricultural issues without having the European Union or the United States to be going looking for a new mandate for negotiations. It's the more speedier way of dealing with some of the, complex issues around agriculture.
Hi, this is Jürgen from the German press agency DPA. I was wondering, the car tariffs, it was a big threat, it was a big story, everybody was afraid, and then the November deadline came and nothing happened. It sort of dropped off the map. How much of an issue was that in the conversations you had here, and where do we stand on this?
It wasn't hardly mentioned. So I think that should be good. That should be good news for Germany.
Okay, yes, Brent.
Fred Fortin with Inside U.S. Trade. Now that there's no WTO appellate body, or at least no functioning one, is a negotiated settlement the only way to resolve the Boeing Airbus dispute, or could another compliance panel be brought and the 2 parties accept a decision? And also, you've expressed several times that there are different avenues for the EU and US to reach some smaller deals. Has the US expressed any interest in some of those smaller deals? And is it kind of a tariff deal or bust, or is it, or can some of these regulatory cooperation issues move forward on kind of the working level?
I suppose what I was trying to do this week is to see and explore whether there is a positive trade agenda where we can align with each other. And we have made some progress on that this week. We have identified areas of further cooperation, and that will be made known in due course. In terms of a mini package, as Ambassador Lighthizer would have described it in recent times, in respect of what we can do in tariffs, we are exploring that as well. And one of the areas we're exploring is along the lines of my previous answer in agriculture, where on sanitary and phytosanitary barriers, we can do a lot of work together in a positive way. And it's a pragmatic way of getting around a difficult impasse that there is in terms of negotiations on other issues in the industrial area.
Yeah, we'll take you in and after. Yeah, go ahead.
On Airbus, sorry, you asked a question. You asked a question on Airbus. What was the precise word? Now, yes, on the basis of a bilateral solution. Well, we have sufficient panel outcomes in the WTO now to be able to have a negotiated settlement, in my view, after 15 years on Airbus and Boeing. And I think we should get on and negotiate an outcome. This is what the EU preferred option is, but we have to wait for a response from the United States.
Thank you, Commissioner Hogan. My name is Nawaz Aoyama with the Asahi Shimbun, Japan's newspaper. My question is, given the difficult challenges surrounding trade, especially as the U.S. has becoming tilting toward protectionism and isolationism, how would you hope that the EU-Japan collaboration would be like to address those difficult challenges, including the WTO reform and the U.S.-China trade tensions and so on?
Well, the fact that we came together this week, the US, EU and Japan, to strike a deal under the chairmanship of the Japanese Minister for Trade is a very good sign that we want to work together on the industrial subsidies and forced technology transfer. It's the beginning of a process, but at least we have agreed something together that moves us along to talk to other member countries about how we want them to work with us in terms of this agenda. We all want to have a level playing field where we can trade in the global stage, and we want to have a global referee through the World Trade Organization. And we are going to talk to like-minded partners on all of those issues, and wherever we get support, we're very happy to work with them in order to develop a common platform on the policy reform in the WTO, on the appellate body, and changing the rules that are there for 25 years that reflects the modern economy of today.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sumaya Kate, The Economist. So a quick question about if the US acts unilaterally in response to the DST with tariffs, will you wait for a WTO panel before responding? And then you just mentioned the appellate body. One of the US complaints has been that other WTO members have not recognized the problem with the appellate body. Would you say that you agree with the US's diagnosis of the problems with the appellate body?
Well, I've said that very explicitly already here at this press conference, that we share the analysis of the United States in relation to the need for WTO reform, major reform, not just tinkering at the edges. But we also share the concerns of the United States in relation to the appellate body, and we look forward to the proposals about how we can establish a mechanism that helps to resolve disputes, but equally ensures that we have an independent functioning body that actually gives this appeals mechanism a chance to come up with results. Like the WTO is probably the place where we should have these dispute resolution issues, including the digital services tax. But I do understand the strength of feeling that Ambassador Lighthizer and others have about this issue. And as I said earlier, we are doing our best to work with Secretary Mnuchin and Ambassador Lighthizer and with the French government to see can we find a solution. But I think everybody agrees that inevitably in the future, through the OECD process, that global tax in relation to technology companies will have to happen in some stage. But let's let the OECD perhaps work its way through in finding a good solution for 160 countries or thereabouts, rather than having maybe a small number of countries. But the French government are working constructively with the United States to try and find a solution within that OECD process.
We have time for one final question. I saw a hand, yes, all the way down there, final question. Yes, we got it.
Hi, this is Sandra Panam with DW Deutsche Welle. I would be interested in your assessment of the Phase 1 US-China trade deal. And of course, one more question, if I may. Your visit to the sea was described as a mission to seek a reset with the Trump administration. Have you been successful? Thank you.
Well, I didn't expect to be successful in resetting a relationship in a few days, but thank you for the target that you set for me. But this was an opportunity for me to meet people for the first time. And I was very happy with the level of engagement and very positive cooperative spirit that we had with all of our interlocutors in the administration and indeed on Capitol Hill. But also we reached out to a lot of other stakeholders through various ways over the last few days. So the China deal that the United States struck was certainly a testimony to the very intense work that Ambassador Lighthizer and his team and Mr. Liu He and the Chinese side were doing for the last year and a half. And it's a complex deal, and there's there are, as I said, positive elements in it, and I look forward to reading it very carefully over the next few days. And already I can see some elements that we can work closely together with the United States through this deal in terms of China cooperation. I would remind you as well that the EU are engaged in intensive negotiations with China as well at the moment to try and develop an investment agreement in 2020. And it's going to include some issues that are applicable to this US-Chinese outcome in respect of intellectual property and issues like that. But we are going further in our negotiations to look at industrial subsidies, the subsidization through state-owned enterprises, and the challenges that Chinese companies are bringing to the European Union and elsewhere in terms of unfair competition through the subsidization of some Chinese enterprises, and we believe this is very unfair. We're working in the WTO process as well with like-minded partners in order to ensure that we have a level playing field in relation to how we change the rules and the disciplines to be able to reflect on this new opportunities together to be able to have a level playing field. We're not afraid of competition, but we want fair competition. So I think Ambassador Lighthizer is somebody I very much respect. He's a man of enormous experience in trade law. He's somebody that is quite professional and intensive in the way he goes about his business. And sometimes we like the messages and sometimes we don't, but at least we know where we stand. And that's my style as well. And I expect that we did business together in the past through the hormone-free beef quota in 2018 for the beef farmers of the United States. At the request of the United States, we delivered. We delivered on soybeans, we delivered on corn. So, you know, we have done a lot that we have signed up to with the United States on agriculture, which is a very sensitive issue for the President. And we are trying to respond in as positive way as we possibly can. And we look forward to cooperating and aligning with the United States now in the weeks and months ahead in order to deepen the cooperation on a common agenda in respect of trade that deals with many issues that are included as well in expanding those to other like-minded partners that we see in the United States-China agreement. So it's a good start, I would describe this week, but a lot done and more to do, I suppose is the kind of the slogan I would emerge from my interactions with all of the various business organizations, administration people, and people on Capitol Hill.
On that positive note, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.